There is something magical about annual family reunions that makes your heart flutter with anticipation. I had been looking forward to this day for months, especially after 6 grueling months buried in work deadlines and corporate meetings. The thought of gathering with loved ones, sharing stories, and creating new memories filled me with genuine excitement. My mother, Patricia, always went above and beyond to make these events special, turning our family estate into a wonderland of nostalgia and connection. As I drove up the familiar winding driveway, I could already smell the barbecue and hear laughter echoing from the backyard. But something felt different this time, though I could not quite put my finger on what it was. Before we dive into this story, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Please drop a comment and let me know your city or country. And if you have ever experienced favoritism in your own family, hit that like button so I know I am not alone in this journey. Do not forget to subscribe because what happens next will completely shock you, and you definitely will not want to miss how this unfolds. Walking into the grand foyer of my childhood home, memories flooded back like a tidal wave. Our family had always been small, but tight-knit, especially after losing my father 3 years ago to cancer. Now it was just the three of us, my mother, Patricia, a formidable 55-year-old woman who commanded attention wherever she went, my older brother Michael, 30 years old and still finding himself as a freelance artist, and me, Hannah, 28, and completely consumed by my career in tech. Michael had always been the free spirit of the family, bouncing from one creative project to another while living comfortably in our mother's guest house. Meanwhile, I had thrown myself into the corporate world, climbing ladders and breaking glass ceilings with relentless determination. People often called me a workaholic, and honestly, they were not wrong. But success came with sacrifices, and lately I felt the growing distance between myself and my family. The favoritism had started early. Even as children, Michael could do no wrong in our mother's eyes. When he broke expensive vases while playing indoor soccer, it was boys being boys. When I accidentally spilled juice on important documents, it was a lecture about responsibility and careful behavior. The pattern continued into adulthood, with Mom constantly making excuses for Michael's financial dependence while questioning every career decision I made. The reunion was already in full swing when I arrived fashionably late due to an emergency board meeting that ran over. About 20 relatives filled the sprawling backyard, from Great Aunt Helen, with her pearls and wisdom, to my youngest cousin Emma, now 15 and obsessed with social media. Chinese lanterns hung between oak trees, casting a warm golden glow over picnic tables laden with homemade dishes and family recipes passed down through generations. Patricia approached me with arms crossed and lips pursed. "Hannah, you are over an hour late. We have been waiting to start the formal program." Her tone carried that familiar edge of disappointment that I had grown accustomed to over the years. Before I could explain about the critical meeting with investors, she had already turned away to fuss over Michael, who was entertaining cousins with exaggerated stories about his latest art installation. "Hannah, there you are," Uncle Robert wrapped me in a bear hug. "We keep reading about your company's expansion in the business section. Your father would have been so proud." Several relatives echoed similar sentiments, asking about my work and celebrating my achievements. For a moment, I felt the warmth of genuine appreciation and recognition for the long hours and sacrifices I had made. But then came the name tags. Patricia had designed special ones for this year's reunion, complete with decorative borders and calligraphy. She made a big show of distributing them, saving Michael's and mine for last. Michael's read, "The Golden Sun," in elegant script with gold accents. When I saw mine, my stomach dropped like a stone. Second after Michael stared back at me in plain black lettering. The relatives nearby fell silent, sensing the tension. I forced a laugh, hoping this was one of Mom's odd jokes. Very funny, Mom. Really creative design this year. But her expression remained serious, almost defiant. She pinned the tag to my blouse with more force than necessary, her eyes holding a message I was not ready to decode. During dinner, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Patricia regaled the table with stories about Michael's incredible artistic vision and his upcoming gallery showing, even though he had mentioned earlier that only 3 people had confirmed attendance. When I tried to share news about our company's recent acquisition of a smaller tech firm, Mom immediately redirected conversation to ask cousin Mark about his new puppy. The relatives began exchanging uncomfortable glances. Aunt Helen, never one to sugarcoat anything, raised an eyebrow when Patricia interrupted my explanation of our new software platform to ask if anyone wanted more potato salad. Even Michael seemed embarrassed, shooting me apologetic looks across the table. As the evening progressed, I found myself growing increasingly frustrated, but determined to maintain composure. This was supposed to be a celebration of family, not a competition. Yet with every dismissive comment and every redirected conversation, I felt smaller and more insignificant in my own family's eyes. After dinner, Patricia called everyone to gather in the living room, her voice carrying that theatrical quality she reserved for important announcements. The relatives arranged themselves on sofas and chairs, curiosity evident on their faces. Michael and I stood near the fireplace, and I noticed him fidgeting with his sleeves, a nervous habit from childhood. I have something very special to share with all of you tonight. Patricia began, her voice gaining strength and authority. This reunion is not just about celebrating our family bonds. It is about recognizing excellence and acknowledging the truth we all know but rarely say out loud. She paused dramatically, scanning the room. There is only one golden child in this family. She turned toward Michael with a smile so radiant it could have powered the house. The wink she gave him was deliberate, loaded with meaning that made my chest tighten with dread. Michael shifted uncomfortably, clearly not expecting to be put in this spotlight. The room fell silent except for the antique grandfather clock ticking in the corner. Come with me, everyone. I have gifts to present. Patricia led the group through the French doors onto the back patio, where two large objects sat covered by elegant velvet drapes. The relatives murmured with anticipation, gathering in a semicircle. My heart hammered against my ribs as a sense of impending humiliation washed over me. With theatrical flair, Patricia pulled away the first covering to reveal a stunning vintage Mustang, 1967, painted in pristine cherry red with chrome bumpers gleaming under the patio lights. The crowd erupted in gasps and exclamations of admiration. The car was absolutely gorgeous, clearly restored to perfection and worth at least $50,000. This beauty is for my golden son, Michael, Patricia announced, her voice swelling with pride. Because he has always followed his heart and pursued his artistic dreams without compromise. This car represents freedom, creativity, and the courage to be different. Michael stood frozen, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the gift and the attention. Several relatives pulled out phones to capture the moment, and Uncle Robert whistled appreciatively at the classic automobile. Michael stammered his thanks, genuinely moved, but also visibly uncomfortable with the spectacle. He hugged our mother tightly, while relatives applauded and offered congratulations. I stood there feeling detached from my own body, watching this scene unfold like a movie where I was merely an observer. Then Patricia turned to me, and the warmth in her expression evaporated like morning mist. Her smile transformed into something cold and calculating as she approached the second covered object. And for Hannah, she said, her voice dropping to a tone I had never heard before, I have something equally appropriate. She yanked away the second covering to reveal an old dented toolbox that looked like it belonged in someone's garage sale. The red paint was chipped, rust spots decorated the corners, and the handle was held together with electrical tape. The contrast with Michael's gleaming car was so stark, it felt like a physical slap. Start fixing your life, Hannah, Patricia said loud enough for everyone to hear. Her smirk was pure malice, designed to humiliate and diminish. You spend so much time trying to fix everyone else's problems at work, maybe it is time you focus on your own issues. She handed me the toolbox with exaggerated ceremony, as if presenting a crown to a queen. The relatives stood in stunned silence. Aunt Helen's mouth fell open in shock. Cousin Sarah looked down at her shoes, clearly embarrassed to witness such blatant cruelty. Even little Emma seemed to understand that something terrible was happening. Michael took a step toward me as if to intervene, but stopped when Patricia shot him a warning glance. I stood there holding the rusty toolbox, feeling the weight of 28 years of second-place treatment crushing down on my shoulders. My face burned with shame, but I refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing me cry. Instead, I looked directly into her eyes and said, "Thank you, Mom. This is very thoughtful." My voice sounded steady, though inside I was screaming. The uncomfortable silence stretched until Uncle Robert cleared his throat and suggested everyone head back inside for dessert. As relatives slowly filed away, shooting me sympathetic glances, I remained on the patio clutching my insulting gift. Patricia lingered, seeming to savor her victory before following the others inside with a satisfied expression. Standing alone on that patio, holding the toolbox while Michael's new car gleamed mockingly in the background, I felt something fundamental shift inside me. The humiliation was complete, total, and deliberate. This was not about gift giving or family celebration. This was about putting me in my place, ensuring I understood my role as the family disappointment. But even as tears threatened to spill, Patricia was not finished with her performance. She returned to the patio, apparently unsatisfied with the level of destruction she had already accomplished. I want to say something else while we have family here as witnesses. She announced, her voice carrying across the yard and drawing relatives back outside despite their obvious discomfort. Hannah has always tried so hard to compete with her brother to prove she is just as good, just as worthy of attention. But the truth is, some people are born to lead and others are born to follow. Some people are naturally gifted and others have to work twice as hard just to achieve half as much. Her words cut through me like broken glass, each syllable calculated to inflict maximum damage. Michael understands his gifts. He embraces his artistic soul and does not try to be something he is not. But Hannah, she paused, looking directly at me with cold satisfaction. Hannah needs to learn that no amount of corporate climbing will change the fundamental truth. Some people are just born to be second best. The final blow landed with surgical precision. I felt my knees wobble, my vision blur slightly around the edges. This woman who was supposed to love and support me unconditionally had just declared to our entire extended family that I was inherently inferior, permanently relegated to runner-up status in my own life. That was my breaking point. Without another word, I turned and walked into the house, straight through the living room, where relatives pretended not to stare up the stairs to my childhood bedroom. I could hear Patricia's voice continuing her speech downstairs, probably explaining how disappointed she was in my life choices. I threw my overnight bag together with shaking hands, my mind reeling from the public execution I had just endured. But as I was zipping up the bag, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. The caller ID showed Marcus Thompson, our company's CEO. Strange considering it was almost 9 o'clock on a Saturday evening. "Hannah, I know this is unusual timing, but we need you at the office immediately. Emergency board meeting. Something big has come up and your presence is absolutely critical. Can you make it within the hour?" His voice carried an urgency I had never heard before, cutting through my emotional fog like a beacon. Without hesitation, I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. As I passed the living room, I could hear Patricia still holding court, probably explaining to relatives how my dramatic exit proved her point about my inability to handle criticism. I did not stop to say goodbye. The drive back to downtown took 45 minutes, giving me time to process the evening's events. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter with each mile as anger began replacing hurt. How dare she humiliate me like that? How dare she diminish my achievements, my character, my worth as a human being? By the time I reached the office building, my sadness had transformed into steel-cold determination. The executive floor blazed with lights despite the late hour. 12 board members had assembled in the main conference room, their faces serious but oddly excited. Marcus stood at the head of the polished table, his usually calm demeanor replaced by barely contained energy. "Hannah, thank you for getting here so quickly. Please sit down. What I am about to tell you will change everything." He gestured to the chair directly across from him. "I am retiring effective immediately. Health concerns that I have been hiding from everyone, including my wife. The board has been aware of this possibility for months, and we have been quietly preparing for transition." My mind struggled to process his words while still reeling from the family disaster. Marcus continued, "After extensive deliberation and review of performance records, financial acumen, leadership capabilities, and vision for the company's future, the board has unanimously voted to name you as my successor. Hannah, we want you to be our new CEO." The room fell silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights. CEO. The word echoed in my head like a prayer I never dared speak aloud. But Marcus was not finished with his revelations. "There is something else, something that makes this transition even more appropriate. The board has discovered that over the past 2 years, you have been quietly purchasing company shares through various investment accounts. Combined with the stock options you have earned through performance bonuses, you now own 51% of this company. Hannah, you are not just our new CEO. You are our majority shareholder." The numbers hit me like lightning. 51%. I owned the company. Not just worked for it, not just managed a department, but literally owned more than half of the entire organization. 2 years of strategic investments, careful financial planning, and shrewd market timing had paid off in ways I never could have imagined. As board members congratulated me and discussed transition timelines, I sat in that conference room chair, feeling like I was floating outside my own body. Less than 2 hours ago, I had been standing on a patio, being told I was second best, holding a rusty toolbox while my mother smirked at my apparent failures. Now I was the CEO and majority owner of a company valued at over $200 million. The irony was not lost on me as I sat in my new corner office at 11:30 that night, looking out over the city lights that twinkled like stars fallen to earth. The executive suite felt surreal after the evening's emotional whiplash, but gradually a profound sense of calm began settling over me like a warm blanket. I thought about Patricia's words, "Start fixing your life." The bitter laughter that escaped my lips echoed off the floor-to-ceiling windows. If only she knew that I had been systematically fixing my life for years, building wealth and influence she could never have imagined. The rusty toolbox sat on my desk like a trophy, no longer a symbol of humiliation, but a reminder of how completely she had misjudged me. Over the next 2 days, I threw myself into CEO transition duties with laser focus. There were contracts to review, strategic plans to approve, and key personnel decisions to finalize. The work provided welcome distraction from lingering hurt while giving me time to process what had happened and decide how to move forward with my family. Tuesday morning brought an unexpected phone call from Patricia. Her voice carried an unusual warmth, almost sweetness, that immediately put me on alert. "Hannah, honey, I have been thinking about Saturday night, and I realize I may have been a little harsh with my words. You know how I get when I'm stressed about family gatherings." I remained silent, letting her continue. "The thing is, Michael is going through some financial difficulties right now. The gallery showing fell through, and he owes money on art supplies and studio rent. I was wondering if you might be able to help him out, just a small loan between siblings. Maybe $5,000 to get him back on his feet." The audacity was breathtaking. 2 days after publicly declaring me second rate and presenting me with a toolbox of failure, she was calling to ask for money. I could hear the calculation in her voice, the assumption that despite her cruelty, I would still come running to rescue the golden child from his problems. "I see," I said carefully, keeping my tone neutral. "Well, why do not you come by my office this afternoon? We can discuss Michael's situation properly." I gave her the address and executive floor number, curious to see how she would react to the environment. Patricia arrived at 3 o'clock sharp, dressed in her best navy suit and clearly expecting to meet with my boss about lending money to an employee's family. The expression on her face when the receptionist addressed me as CEO Williams was worth every moment of Saturday's humiliation. Her confident stride faltered as she followed me past the executive assistant's desk and into the corner office with my name on the door. "I do not understand," she stammered, looking around at the mahogany furniture, original artwork, and wall of industry awards with my name engraved on them. "When did this happen? How long have you been in charge here?" Her voice carried a mixture of confusion and dawning realization that perhaps she did not know her daughter as well as she thought. I gestured for her to sit in one of the leather chairs facing my desk, the same desk where I had signed partnership agreements and million-dollar contracts. "I was promoted Saturday night about 2 hours after I left your house, actually, though I have been working toward this position for quite some time." For the next hour, I walked her through my journey from entry-level programmer to senior executive, then explained how I had been strategically investing in company stock for 2 years. I showed her financial reports, business plans, and the documentation proving my majority ownership. With each revelation, Patricia's face grew paler, her earlier confidence crumbling like a sandcastle at high tide. "I had no idea you were so successful," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I thought you were just another middle manager working long hours for someone else's company. I never realized you were building an empire." Tears began forming in her eyes as the magnitude of her mistake became clear. The conversation that followed was painful but necessary. Patricia broke down, completely apologizing through sobs and trying to explain her behavior. She talked about her own childhood, growing up as the middle child who never felt special, always competing with siblings for their parents' attention. She admitted that seeing Michael struggle while I succeeded triggered old insecurities about her own worth and failures as a mother. "I was wrong, Hannah. Completely, horribly wrong. I let my own demons poison how I treated you, and I have probably damaged our relationship forever." Her mascara ran in dark streams down her cheeks as years of buried pain surfaced. "I was so afraid that if I acknowledged your success, it would somehow diminish Michael. or prove that I had failed him by not pushing him harder. I listened without interrupting, finally understanding the twisted logic that had driven years of favoritism and neglect. It did not excuse her behavior, but it provided context that helped me begin processing the hurt. When she finished, I leaned back in my chair and considered my response carefully. Mom, I appreciate your honesty, and I can see that you are genuinely sorry. But apologies do not erase decades of feeling like I did not matter, like nothing I accomplished would ever be good enough. I need you to understand that this is not about money or success. It is about basic respect and love. My voice remained steady professional, as if I were negotiating a business deal. If we are going to rebuild our relationship, it has to be on new terms. No more comparing Michael and me. No more dismissing my achievements or treating me like a backup plan. And definitely no more public humiliation disguised as family fun. I pulled out a business card and slid it across the desk. I am willing to pay for family therapy sessions if you are serious about making changes. But the choice is yours. Over the following months, we began the slow process of rebuilding our relationship. Patricia started individual therapy to address her childhood trauma and learned healthier ways to cope with her insecurities. Michael surprisingly was relieved to have the golden child pressure removed and began taking steps toward genuine independence. I helped him develop a proper business plan for his art career, treating him like any other potential investment, rather than enabling his dependence. The family therapy sessions were difficult but productive. We learned to communicate without competition, to celebrate individual achievements without comparison, and to acknowledge the damage that had been done while working toward forgiveness. It was not a fairy tale transformation, but it was real progress built on honest foundation. As I sit in my office now 6 months later, that rusty toolbox occupies a place of honor on my bookshelf. It serves as a daily reminder that sometimes the most painful moments in our lives can become catalysts for the most profound growth. The woman who tried to break me down actually pushed me toward claiming the success I had already built. I learned that validation cannot come from external sources, not even family. Self-worth must be internally generated and maintained independent of others' opinions or approval. The years I spent desperately seeking my mother's recognition were years I could have spent celebrating my own achievements and building unshakable confidence in my abilities. Perhaps most importantly, I discovered that healing broken relationships requires two willing participants. I could not force Patricia to change, but I could set boundaries that protected my emotional well-being while leaving the door open for genuine reconciliation. Sometimes love means holding people accountable for their actions while still offering hope for redemption. The greatest gift was not proving my mother wrong about my worth, but proving to myself that I had the strength to survive her rejection and thrive despite it. Success achieved in spite of others' doubts tastes sweeter than success handed to us on silver platters. Every obstacle overcome becomes proof of our resilience. Every setback conquered becomes evidence of our determination. Now, when young employees in my company struggle with family pressures or imposter syndrome, I share pieces of my story. I tell them that sometimes the people who should believe in us the most are the ones who doubt us the longest. But that does not diminish our value or limit our potential. We must learn to be our own champions, our own cheerleaders, our own sources of strength. Sometimes the greatest gift is not proving others wrong, but proving to yourself that you were right all along about who you truly are. The person who matters most in your success story is not the one holding you back, but the one staring back at you from the mirror, ready to fight for dreams that others cannot even see. Have you ever experienced favoritism or felt undervalued in your own family? Share your story in the comments below, because your experiences matter and others need to hear that they are not alone in this struggle. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button to show your support. Subscribe for more real stories about overcoming family challenges and finding your own path to success. And do not forget to share this video with someone who needs to remember their own worth today. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that your story is still being written. The best chapters often come after the most difficult ones, so never stop believing in the person you are becoming.